Picture yourself as a citizen of ancient Rome. You've just finished a lavish feast, so you head to the public toilet. A long stone bench, no stalls, no walls, shoulder to shoulder with total strangers. And when you're done, you reach for the cleaning sponge. The shared cleaning sponge. Ugh. Welcome to daily life in history's greatest empire. So today, we're wiping away the marble, pun intended, and the myth to reveal the disgusting things that were totally normal in ancient Rome. But first, subscribe to the channel and tell us which era we should explore next. Go ahead, take a seat. Let's start with that sponge because it has earned the spotlight. The Romans called it a tersorium, a natural sea sponge lashed to the edge of a wooden stick. After doing your business, you'd reach down, give yourself a wipe, and then set it back for the next person. Yep, the next person. Think of it as a community toothbrush, except for the exact opposite end of your body. To clean it between uses, Romans would rinse the sponge in a little channel of running water. Or, if they were feeling fancy, a bucket of vinegar or salt water, which is a bit like rinsing a plate with a garden hose and calling it dishwasher safe. The philosopher Seneca even recorded the grim story of a Germanic gladiator who chose to end his own life rather than fight in the arena by shoving one of these communal toilet sponges down his throat. We'll just let you sit with that for 1 second. The takeaway? In the empire that gave us aqueducts, roads, and concrete, the single most personal hygiene tool you owned wasn't actually yours. And believe it or not, the toilet you used it on was somehow even worse. Now, about that toilet bench, Roman public latrines, or foracae, were astonishingly social spaces. Picture a long stone slab with a row of keyhole-shaped holes carved into it, sometimes 20 or 30 in a single room, all facing each other with exactly 0 partitions. You'd sit elbow to elbow with senators, slaves, and total strangers, casually chatting about politics, business deals, and dinner plans, as one does. It was basically a group chat, except everyone could hear, smell, and see everything. And it somehow got worse beneath you. The sewers below were a dark, gassy ecosystem, and pockets of methane would occasionally ignite, meaning small bursts of flame could erupt straight up out of the toilet hole. Romans were so spooked by this that some latrines were decorated with images of Fortuna, the goddess of luck, right on the walls. You would literally pray for good fortune before sitting down. And as if fire wasn't enough, rats, snakes, and other uninvited guests were known to swim up through the sewer system and bite people in the one place nobody ever wants to be bitten. Suddenly, that shared sponge is the least of your problems. Here is where Rome gets resourceful, in the worst possible way. Human urine was a prized commodity because once it's aged, it becomes rich in ammonia, which is a genuinely effective cleaning agent. Professional launderers, called fullers, would collect big pots of the stuff, let it ferment into a truly pungent broth, and then, brace yourself, have workers stomp around it in barefoot to clean and whiten Rome's togas. So that gleaming white toga a senator wore to look respectful and powerful, soaked in fermented pee, by foot. Ugh. The demand was so high that the Emperor Vespasian put a tax on urine collected from public latrines. When his own son complained that the tax was disgusting, Vespasian reportedly held up a gold coin, asked his son whether it smelled bad, and delivered a line that became a Roman proverb, pecunia non olet. Money doesn't stink. He is basically the ancient ancestor of every guy who shrugs and says, hey, it's just business. And urine didn't stop at laundry because some Romans also swished it around as a tooth-whitening mouthwash. The poet Catullus once mocked a man named Ignatius for his suspiciously bright smile, more or less. We all know exactly what you've been gargling. Imagine the breath at that dinner party. Whew! Not everything disgusting in Rome was obvious. Some of it actually tasted delicious. The Romans were obsessed with a sweet syrup called sapa, or defrutum, which they drizzled into their wine, into food, and even their medicine. The small catch, they made it by boiling down grape juice in pots and pans made of lead. The lead leached into the syrup, forming a compound that happens to taste sweet. So they were quite literally seasoning their meals with poison, and going back for seconds, of course. And lead was everywhere else too. Their water pipes were made of it. In fact, the Latin word for lead, plumbum, is the exact reason we call it plumbing today. Their cosmetics, their cups, their cookware, lead, and more lead. Now, here's the part we're going to play completely straight because this isn't funny. Chronic lead exposure causes infertility, organ damage, and cognitive decline, and some historians believe it quietly poisoned generations of Romans, possibly even contributing to the erratic behavior of a few notorious emperors. That being said, the Romans even had an architect named Vitruvius, who openly warned that lead pipes were dangerous to health. They just kept using them anyway. Old habits die hard. In this case, sometimes literally. And if slowly poisoning themselves at home wasn't enough, just wait until you see what they got up to at dinner. You have probably heard that wealthy Romans built special rooms called vomitoria, where they would purge between courses so they could keep on eating. Time to clean that one up, because it's only half true. The word vomitorium was absolutely real, but it referred to the passenger exits of amphitheaters, like the Colosseum. The big tunnels that spewed crowds out into the streets after a show. So there was no dedicated purpose like puke palace. However, and this is the genuinely gross part, the over-the-top purging really did happen. The philosopher Seneca described Rome's elite with pure contempt, writing that they eat to vomit and vomit to eat. At the most lavish banquets, some guests really would make themselves throw up just to clear room for the next round of stuffed dormice and roasted flamingo tongue. And yes, flamingo tongue was considered a delicacy. So the building wasn't a vomitorium, but the dinner party absolutely was. It's a little like discovering that the famous legend was wrong, but the reality was somehow even more revolting. Honestly, welcome to basically every episode on this channel. If you got sick in ancient Rome, the nearest pharmacy was the arena. According to the writer Pliny the Elder, one wildly popular treatment for epilepsy was drinking the warm, fresh blood of a slain gladiator, ideally scooped up right there in the stands. The thinking was that a strong young fighter's vital force would somehow transfer into the person who drank it, which is ancient WebMD levels of wrong. When the gladiatorial games were eventually banned, people reportedly just switched to drinking the blood of executed criminals instead, because the Romans were nothing if not adaptable, and the gladiators kept on giving even while alive. After a match, the mixture of dirt, sweat, and oil scraped off a fighter's skin with a curved metal tool called a strigil, and that was carefully collected, bottled, and sold as a luxury product. Wealthy Roman women would buy this grime, a paste politely called glorious. It was used as face cream and even as an aphrodisiac. So a celebrity gladiator's used, scraped-off body sludge was essentially the ancient world's sold-out skincare drop. The more famous the fighter, the more his sweat was worth, which means star athletes were monetizing their own grime roughly 2,000 years before anyone invented the sponsorship deal. Somewhere, an influencer is quietly taking notes. But for sheer eye-watering stench, nothing in Rome could compete with what they put on their food. Now let's talk about Rome's single favorite condiment, the one they splashed on practically everything, garum. Garum was a fish sauce, and the word sauce is doing some truly heroic lifting in that sentence. It was made by taking fish guts, fish blood, and small whole fish, packing them down in salt, and then leaving them to ferment in the open sun for weeks, sometimes months, until the whole mess slowly liquefied into a salty, savory paste. The smell was so legendarily foul that garum production was frequently banned inside city limits and exiled to factories way out on the edges of town. And yet the Romans adored the stuff, pouring it over meat, vegetables, and fruit, and even stirring it into their wine. The very finest vintages of garum were genuine luxury goods that cost a small fortune. Think of it as the truffle oil of its day, if truffle oil happened to be made from 3-month-old rotting anchovy intestines. To be fair to Rome, modern fish sauce and Worcestershire sauce are basically direct descendants, so they really were onto something delicious. They were just onto it. Very, very smelly. Finally, let's address the one thing everyone is sure the Romans got right. Bathing. Rome's grand public baths are world famous, and the Romans genuinely did love getting clean. The only problem is what exactly they were getting clean in. The water in those big communal pools was often changed very infrequently, sometimes barely at all, so it slowly became a warm soup of everyone's sweat, dead skin, oil, and grime. And remember the strigil, that little skin-scraping tool? Picture all of that scraped off, human residue going somewhere. It went in the pool. Worse still, the Romans had no concept of germs, so the sick happily bathed right alongside the healthy, open wounds and all. Roman doctors actively recommended an ice bath to help heal injuries, which means the water was less refreshing luxury spa and more communal bacteria broth. So our Roman citizen, having somehow survived the sponge, the latrine, the lead, the rotten fish sauce, finally lowers himself into a nice hot bath and sits in the collective filth of half the neighborhood. You know what? At this point, that shared sponge is honestly starting to look pretty good. And that was daily life in the greatest empire the world had ever seen, built on roads, on law, on engineering genius, and on an absolutely staggering tolerance for filth. The Rome of the movies is all gleaming marble and golden glory. The real Rome smelled like a fish market on fire and cleaned itself with a stick. A shared one, in case you somehow managed to forget. So what do you think? Which of these would send you sprinting back to the present fastest? And which disgusting era should we drag into the light next? Let us know down in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our channel.